On the call, we have Pam Wasserman, Senior VP for Education, who will delve into our population education program and the latest resources for students and educators. Marian Starkey, our VP for Communications, will give an overview of the year's outreach efforts and share updates on our Global Partners program. And to wrap up, Rebecca Harrington, Senior Director of Advocacy and Outreach, will share insights on our joint Fight for Her campaign that mobilized activists across the country. If you have any questions for our speakers, please drop those in the Q&A box found at the bottom of your screen. We will do our very best to get those answered during the Q&A session facilitated by our senior analyst, Hannah Evans. And for any questions we don't have time to answer live, we will provide written answers along with a recording of this presentation, the presentation slides, and access to the chat box discussion. Now, those are all the housekeeping items for me. I will go ahead and send it over to Pam to get us started. Just get a sec while we get those presentation slides up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Can everyone see that?
Looks good.
Welcome, everybody. Glad to be able to share some highlights with you from the 2024 population education year. We're halfway through our school year, but I'll be giving some highlights since January. And I know some of you might have been on a webinar we did 2 months ago, myself and my colleague Carol, to give you an overview of our whole program and the history. So if I don't cover that in this highlights presentation, please feel free to put something in the chat or have something for the Q&A at the end. Well, as many of you know, a big part of the population education program is producing materials for teachers and then facilitating workshops for them around the country. And in 2024, all these pins on the map of US and Canada shows all the locations where workshops were presented by either staff or members of our volunteer network, who are all professional educators. So you can see we covered a lot of territory this year. I even did the inset for Alaska because we did a webinar for some university students up in Fairbanks, which was really fun. We do a few outside of North America, but most of them are in US and Canada. And I'll just show you what that looks like in terms of the numbers. We won't have our final numbers until probably the spring when we get all of the follow-up materials in from our trainers around the country. But it's looking like we'll land around 630 teacher workshops this year, which is really great. It's an increase from where we were last year and the year before. We found that 2024 teachers were fully back from their pandemic life, and they were back at conferences, back doing school district in-person trainings.
Hey, Pam.
Yeah.
Just wanted to hop on real quick and let you know that the slide did not advance if you wanted to give that another go. We're all very curious to see that map.
Okay. So yeah, so you can see we were in a lot of places this year. And in terms of numbers, as I said, we did about 630 over the course of the year. And I just put some bar charts in so you could see the breakdown of the in-person versus virtual and the ones that were staff-led versus volunteer-led. So we're doing about 2/3 of our workshops are back in person, about 1/3 are virtual. And this enables us to do presentations in places where we don't have trainers or they're a little hard for staff to travel to, like Fairbanks, Alaska. And it's about half and half. Volunteers lead a little more than half of the workshops this year. So we really depend on that network of trainers for us. Workshop participants, the final numbers will be somewhere between 10 and 11,000 when we have all the final data. And those events occurred in 44 states plus DC, 6 Canadian provinces. So we covered a lot of geographic territory. In addition to the workshops, we also offer a graduate course. This is open to middle and high school teachers. It gives them a deeper dive into population education. When we offer it over the summer, it's over 4 weeks. So it's kind of condensed, but teachers seem to prefer doing it that way when they have time over the summer. And they can earn graduate credit for that. So they can get 3 credits from Adams State University in Colorado, which does a lot of these educational online courses. Okay. We also hosted 2 leadership institutes for new volunteer trainers this year. They were held in Charlotte, North Carolina in the summer and in Detroit in late September. So all in all, we trained 51 new trainers from 22 states and Canada. And these folks are now already facilitating workshops for us in their local areas, which is great. And we have them scheduled to do a lot more in 2025. We have scheduled our events for next year. So if any of you on the call have teacher friends or university faculty who work with future teachers who you think might be interested in becoming a trainer, you can contact me for more information. But those events are going to be in Los Angeles in the summer. It's going to be on UCLA's campus. And in November, we're hosting one in Winter Park, Florida, which is in the Orlando area. We pick locations based on, where we also need more representation to cover all the requests we get in. In addition to the teacher training work we did this year, this was also a year when we completed a new edition of one of our major curriculum items. This is our K-5 curricula called Counting on People. And this just gives you a little snapshot of what teachers will see when they log on to this site. It's a password protected website, but all of the educators who attend our workshops and teach elementary, they get this. We don't charge them for this. If people want to purchase it off our website, they can for a minimal fee. But each of our curricula have over 40 teaching activities. This one for elementary students has some student readings. It has civic engagement ideas and lists that we're continually updating on recommended children's books and multimedia links that complement the activities that we have for teachers. And we've already been showcasing some of the newer activities in our fall workshops, which has been great. One of the ways we get word out about our curricula is through exhibiting at teacher conventions. And the 2 largest ones we do each year are the National Science Teachers Association. That was in Denver in the spring of last year. We just came back from the National Council for the Social Studies Conference. That was up in Boston right before Thanksgiving. We'll be doing those 2 conventions again next year. And you can just see from the photo, we usually have a few staff on hand to talk to teachers about what we have. We have our dot video playing on a loop, and so that engages folks. That wheel you see on the side, we have people spin the wheel, and they always win something that they can use for their classes. So it's a fun time to either engage new people who aren't aware of what we're doing, or to show some of our fans what we have that's new. We also have a lot of material that can be downloaded from our main website, populationeducation.org. In addition to a lot of activities, teachers can download. The new materials include blogs that go up on a weekly schedule. We've had these marketing themes for each quarter of the school year, focusing on this year, it was one quarter was STEAM, one was forest education. In the fall, we did one on U.S. history that focused on population shifts and migration around the U.S. And we're in the midst of our last quarter of the year, where we're doing one about teaching about big numbers. So it's kind of geared toward math teachers, so they can help students understand what millions and billions mean when we're talking about population numbers. And of course, we're also on social media. Finally, I wanted to just talk a little bit about our student video contest, which is international. We launch it every September when the school year starts. Students have until early March to get in their submissions, and then we judge them and announce the winners in May. So it's a full school year event. These are some of the stats from from the contest that we just wrapped up in May of this year. You can see we had more than 4,600 students participate in the contest. About a third of them middle schoolers, 2/3 high school, and we always pick new topics every year for students to link population to. The challenge is they have to produce a 1-minute video, sort of like a PSA. They can work individually, they can work in teams. Most are part of school assignments. And these were our winning students from the contest that wrapped up in 2024. From all over the country, we had some student winners from Egypt as well. We now have, well over 50 countries in which students are sending us their submissions. So it's a way to engage students directly, or another way for us to engage teachers to give them something fun for the students to work on. It helps them with their research skills, their communication skills. We get a lot of great feedback from the teachers who've been assigning it year after year. And these are the new contest topics for the contest we launched this fall: child well-being, rainforest ecosystems, and sanitation. We try to find topics that mesh well with courses in science and social studies on the middle and high school levels, because those are our primary audiences for our materials. They win cash prizes. We give lots of prizes by, overall, by state, by parts of the world. So we really try to engage a lot of students in this. And then finally, I just wanted to wrap up by saying that 2025 is going to be our 50-year anniversary of the Population Education Program. We started in 1975. So we've been building on this for many years, and we're always learning new lessons, and we're looking forward to the next 50 years of population education. And I will stop sharing and turn it over to Marion.
Hello, everybody. Let me see if I can get my slides going. Okay, so yeah, I'm Marion Starkey. I'm the VP for Communications here, and I will be presenting on behalf of the entire communications team, which is pictured here. I'll be mentioning people by name, so just thought I would throw this up here. This is the 4 of us, and Florence Blondell on the bottom right is a new staff member. She just started here about 3 weeks ago. So Hannah and Olivia have been here for a few years each, and yeah. So I'll start off talking about earned media. We've had several exciting media placements this year, a couple of op-eds for World Population Day and World Contraception Day, some letters to the editor, including 2 in the New York Times. Hannah has been interviewed for a couple of different podcasts, actually, along with Pam. The Overpopulation podcast featured both of them. It's a really interesting episode. I should mention that everything that has an underline is hyperlinked. So when Stephanie sends out these slides, the PDF, you'll be able to click on everything, and it'll take you to various places on the internet to read more or listen or whatever the case may be. We started a little while back putting our unpublished letters to the editor and op-eds on our blog, just so that people could see what sorts of articles we're responding to and what our responses are, even if they don't get picked up for publication. So if you're interested in seeing those too, those are on our blog. And we also have a member media hits page. So if you get published and it's about something related to the work that we do, even if you don't mention our organization, we would love to hear about it and feature you on that page. So please do get in touch if you ever, have something published. We'd like to know about it. So Olivia has been busy with our blog this year. She's done 22 posts, and this is just an example list of topics that she's covered. There's obviously many more. She does an incredible amount of research for these blog posts, and they're really informative. I always learn a lot when I read them. So I suggest checking out that content. There's a lot to look through from the last few years. As usual, we did 4 issues of our quarterly magazine. This is the cover for each one this year. And actually just got my December issue in the mail yesterday. So that's out officially this week. The 4 issues this year covered topics ranging from low fertility and failed pronatalist policies, to case studies in Tanzania and Indonesia, to going over the UN population projections that came out in July, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in a couple of slides. We have an updated info brief. So one of the things that Hannah does here is, as part of her outreach to professors, is to create publications for them to use in their classes that will help them link population with various environmental challenges. So this one was updated just a couple of months ago. It focuses on climate change. I think it's about 15 pages long. And like I said, they're for professors, but anybody can look at them and download them. They're a really great resource. They're some of the most popular pages on our website. So yeah, I put a link to the info brief there, and then a link to the entire series below that if you're interested in seeing what else we've got. Another one was updated just a little while back too. So yeah, we'll keep working at those to make sure they always have the most up-to-date data. So yeah, Hannah's done 124 presentations to college and university classes this year, which is a record for her. And I included a little student testimonial up there. And this is a photo from a recent presentation that she did in person at Palomar College near San Diego. Most of the speaking events that she does are virtual, but occasionally there is an in-person one, and this was one of those. She also went in person earlier this year to the University of Guam, and that was a follow-up to a virtual presentation that she gave last year, and they enjoyed having her so much they asked her to come back and be a presenter at this conference. So she did, and you can see her here in this picture with the professor and some of the students who invited her, and they're sharing a poster that they were presenting at the conference of population challenges and human ecology. And these students also created a page on the university's website about those topics after hearing her talk. They were very inspired. So that's been a cool relationship to watch unfold. She also, for the second year in a row, has taught a summer course at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. So it's a 5-week course. They meet 4 times a week for a couple of hours. This year she had 15 students plus a professor who audited. So just somebody who was interested in the topic and wanted to sit in. I included student testimonial here as well. And yeah, as far as I know, she'll be teaching it again next summer. It's gone really well so far. I should mention, one of the things that the students have liked the best about her summer course is that she has invited guest speakers to do a lot of presentations. And so most of those guest speakers are from our global partner organizations, which Stephanie mentioned. We have 19 organizations that we help support. Obviously with your support. And right now we actually have a matching gift challenge going through December 31st. So all gifts made to this challenge grant will be doubled by a generous fellow supporter. And so, yeah, you can see the variety of organizations that we have here that we support. They're in Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa. There's one in South Asia and Nepal. And they work locally in their own communities, expanding access to family planning and other reproductive health services, breaking down the barriers to girls' education that exist in a lot of places, and working on conservation initiatives. And some of the organizations do more than one of those things at the same time. So yeah, you can read about all of those individual organizations at your leisure if you're interested. Olivia and I gave a presentation for World Population Day back in July, a couple hours after the UN Population Division released their new projections, which come out every 2 to 3 years. There's a recording of the event, and our slides and everything are available on our website. So if you weren't able to attend in person, you can watch the recording now if you're interested. And yeah, I won't go over the new projection data now, but that's all in there if you're curious. We have been doing an interesting project for the past few months. We hired Lake Research Partners, which is a research firm that we've worked with in the past a few times. We wanted to collect our own research to use it in order to counter all of these articles that we're seeing over the last couple of years about low fertility and a birth rate crisis, and there not being enough people. A lot of these articles are fueled by statements from people like Elon Musk, who is kind of constantly talking about a population collapse being the biggest threat facing humanity. So anyway, we wanted to kind of dig into that and get our own data. And so we surveyed, well, we did focus groups first with 5 different groups of people based on generation and sex. And then using what we learned from those focus groups, we created a survey that we distributed. It was mixed mode, so we did it over the internet and over the phone with over 1,400 adults. And we just got the results from that a couple of weeks ago. So we're still kind of parsing through all the data and getting ready to pull it all together and pitch it to journalists and see if they're interested in covering the new data that we have to share with them. And so hopefully the next time we talk to you, we'll have updates on that. Or just it's in process right now, so I can't really share a whole lot. But yeah, I think the data that we collected was pretty interesting. We were asking people about their childbearing preferences and desires, and then their actual childbearing outcomes, and whether there was a discrepancy there, and if so, why? What led people to have, in most cases, fewer children than they would have liked to have had, and is it because their preferences changed over time, or is it for a variety of other factors that they answered? So yeah, a lot of really interesting data to go through, and yeah, we'll share more about that when we can. Another new initiative that we took on this year was working as a consultative group with the United Nations. So we've had this status for like 8 years now. We haven't made good use of it. We really just haven't had the staff capacity to do so, but we have this special consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the UN that allows us to be part of deliberations. We can attend conferences, we can deliver oral statements, written statements, we can chime in on drafts of publications that are being created with the hope of influencing them. So we've really gotten involved pretty heavily with that this year, largely to do, I would say, with Florence, the new staff member that I mentioned. She, up until just a little less than a month ago, was a staff member at Population Matters, which is a similar organization in the UK. Which is actually where Olivia came from as well. She worked there before working here. So yeah, she got us and Population Media Center to get together and start creating these joint statements, which the UN prefers that groups of organizations get together and deliver them together. They have more impact if you do that. So we've worked as a group of 3 organizations a lot this year. The first statement that we did was an oral statement, and a board member of Population Matters delivered that in person at the Commission on Population and Development, which is a conference that happens every spring. We also hosted a virtual side event, the 3 organizations did, and we had Dr. Gladys Kalema-Zikusoka, who's on our board of directors and is also the founder and executive director of Conservation Through Public Health, which is our longest running global partner based in Uganda. And then Dr. Karen Hardy, who is a consultant who's been working on population issues for probably her entire career, decades. So the 2 of them gave a really interesting presentation, which I put the link to the recording up there. And yeah, we had about 150 people attend, and it was really interesting, and I think people enjoyed it. We've already submitted our written statement for the same conference next spring. I'm sure there will be an opportunity to do an oral statement as well. We don't know about that yet, but Florence is planning to attend in person in New York. So looking forward to seeing how that all shakes out. In September, there was a conference called the Summit of the Future, and the purpose of it was to finalize and adopt a document called the Pact for the Future, which is, the intention behind it is to sort of motivate member nations of the UN to ramp up their efforts in terms of trying to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, which have an end date of 2030, and which I think most of them we are nowhere near meeting. So there were several rounds of drafts of this document that went around to the greater community, and we provided comments on each of those drafts. We also did an oral statement about the second revision of the draft in July at a large virtual conference. And we did another oral statement which was a consultation about the summit itself back in the spring. And we're very pleased to report that this document did not previously have any language about population challenges, and now it does. And at all of these conferences that we attended, we were the only groups talking about population challenges, like even saying the word population. So we really feel pretty responsible for getting this commitment included in the pact. So yeah, we're gonna keep at it. Just another one. We just recently submitted a joint statement in October for the Commission on the Status of Women, which is happening next spring. And we also submitted comments on a scoping report for the UN's biodiversity program. They did it's this huge assessment of the status of biodiversity. They did a first assessment in 2019, and the second one is expected to be out in 2028. So it's a very long, drawn out process that I'm sure we'll have more opportunities to be involved in. But so far we've been able to comment on the scoping report. Oops. I guess, that's almost it. One of the things that Florence is doing here is taking over the social media responsibilities from Olivia, who's done a really great job. We're gonna have her focus more on earned media going forward. And Florence has already created a lot of really interesting videos, a lot of them about our global partners, largely because we are doing this matching gift campaign this month. So if you're on social media and if you would like to follow us and see what we're up to and keep track of population research and news, then this is a great way to do it. All the links to the various platforms. And then just again, here we are, and I've included our email addresses on this one. So if you'd like to get in touch, we'd love to hear from you. And that's what I've got. Look forward to the Q&A. I'll turn it over to Rebecca.
Thanks, Marianne. And hey, everyone, thanks so much for joining us today. Let me just share my screen. Thanks for your patience. So we the fight for her, the way that we did the Fight for Her campaign this year is we started off by running an organizing program in 6 locations across the country. So in Phoenix and Tucson, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, Columbus, Ohio, Manchester, New Hampshire, and then the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, which includes Allentown, Bethlehem, and Easton. And we had organizers on the ground in each of those places, and they collected nearly 7,000 petitions asking people to support the Fight for Her. They did their clipboarding and their petition gathering at all sorts of places, farmers markets, on campus, at student fairs, at community events. They went to a bunch of Pride festivals over the summer, really working to engage both the campus and the larger, broader communities in each of these locations. They did a great job engaging both federal and state elected officials. And they partnered with a variety of community organizations, repro rights groups, LGBTQ+ groups, immigrant rights groups, democratic groups, etc. And they really worked to develop some strong volunteer leaders, including a group of summer fellows who worked for us for a couple of months over the summer, and were really instrumental in some of the things that we did on the ground. Wanted to share a few of these fellows. These are our fellows from New Hampshire. We have Fiona on the left and Veronica on the right. And then in the Lehigh Valley, Presley on the left and Isabella on the right. And in the center is our Fight for Her Lehigh Valley organizer and Canvas director, Lacey. The fellows worked really hard helping throughout the summer with petition gathering, with doing volunteer events, with doing meetups, with helping to organize our big summits, which we did at the end of the summer. And were really impressive. I got a chance to meet Presley and Isabella when I was in Pennsylvania for an event. And they were just fantastic college students. They had worked to organize the event and recruit for the event. And they also gave the presentation about the global gag rule, which is really impressive. It's a hard thing to talk about, even when you do this work every day. So it was really great to see those volunteers being identified and then developed throughout the year. This is just a assortment of photos of the work that happened over the summer. In the upper left, there's a photo of our New Hampshire organizer and Canvas director, Hannah. She's with Congressman Chris Pappas, who represents the 1st Congressional District of New Hampshire. We've had a longstanding, very good relationship with Congressman Pappas through our Fight for Her campaign, and Hannah maintained that relationship over the course of this year. He stopped by at a tabling event, I believe at a Pride event. On the upper right, on the left is Guy, who is our Columbus, Ohio organizer and Canvas director. And on the right is one of his strong volunteers, EA, who worked with him over the summer. In the lower left-hand corner, that's Hannah and myself and Melvine Oyo, who's on our board. She joined us over the summer. She came to the States for several weeks and did a speaking tour in 4 of our 6 Fight for Her communities, talking about the impact of policies like the Global Gag Rule and the Helms Amendment on real people's lives and organizations working on the ground in Kenya and East Africa. And a couple of the fellows and some other volunteers are there. This is an event we did at a local women's club in Concord, New Hampshire. Just a really nice, small, kind of intimate conversation with Melvine and folks who attended. Lots of good questions were asked. A bunch of different organizations joined on to partner for the event. And then in the lower right-hand corner is Guy and Melvine and some of Guy's volunteers in Columbus. And they were grabbing breakfast before a Juneteenth festival that they tabled at, and where Melvine was able to speak to folks. So yeah, lots of great stuff happening out in the field, connecting with all sorts of different groups and people, and really establishing the fight for her in these communities. So as I mentioned earlier, our organizing program kind of started in the spring, worked over the summer, and culminated in these summit events we had in all 6 locations. We had just over 200 people attending the 6 events. The events engaged elected officials, community organizations. We had high school and college students involved, as well as community activists. Something that I really appreciated about the events, I attended 2, one in Pennsylvania and one in Tucson. There were just some really engaged students across the board, but in the Lehigh Valley in particular, there was a wonderful group of high school students, of 8 high school students who are members of their school's NOW, National Organization of Women chapter. And they'd been connected to our work and the campaign by Presley, one of our volunteers whose photo I showed earlier. And they just showed up at the day of the summit, ready to help out and to get involved in whatever we were doing. They were very plugged in. They were very helpful. And it was really encouraging to see, folks that young really turning out and ready to do the work. We also had, engaged community activists. A lot of them spoke at our summits, from professors to, state and local elected officials to professors. So really, our summits showcased a really wide range of experience. We also had some great engagement from our champions in Congress. Representative Chris Pappas from New Hampshire was not able to attend the New Hampshire Summit, but he put together a fantastic video, which during the Q&A I'll drop in the chat. But just thanking folks for coming to the event and for working on the fight for her, and just the importance of fighting for reproductive health and rights, and all the work he's doing in Congress to support those rights. Senator Jean Shaheen, who's one of the foremost leaders on international family planning, was also unable to come, but sent a great letter thanking people for attending the event and for their work on the campaign. Just wanted to share a few photos. This is the New Hampshire group, who turned out a good crowd for the event in New Hampshire. This is just kind of a silly photo of the group in Las Vegas who turned out for their summit. And these are my favorite. These are the high school students I mentioned a few minutes ago who were just so fantastic, gave me so much hope for the future. So I was really thrilled to have them join us, and I'm hoping they'll stay plugged in and engaged going forward. So we wrapped up our organizing effort at the end of September, at which point we transitioned into doing canvases, voter canvases, or door knocking efforts in all 6 locations across the country. So the bulk of the time from the end of September through the election was spent doing nonpartisan voter education canvases. So stressing the importance of voting to people at the door, and then helping them build vote plans. Do you know where your polling location is? Do you know how you'll get to the polls? Are you planning to vote? Here's the website you can go to find all the information. Like, are you, all of those sort of like basics, nuts and bolts of building a voter plan. And you can see on the left, we did that in the 4th and 6th congressional districts of Arizona, the 1st, 3rd, and 4th congressional districts of Nevada, the 15th congressional district of Ohio, the 1st and 2nd congressional districts of New Hampshire, and the 7th congressional district of Pennsylvania. And we did all of those, with the exception of Ohio, which I'll get to in a minute, through Election Day. And then flipped to, sorry, I take that back. We did most of those through up until close to Election Day. And then we flipped to doing partisan canvases in the 6th congressional district of Arizona, the 1st, 3rd, and 4th in Nevada, and the 7th of Pennsylvania. And here's just some numbers, some top line numbers of the partisan work we did, the get out the vote work we did for repro rights champions. So we knocked on 11,765 doors and spoke with 4,831 potential voters. You can see we really smashed our goals there. We spoke with we knocked on 107% of our knock goal and 221% of our contact goal. So just really got out there, knocked on a lot of doors, saw a lot of people, talked with a lot of folks, made a lot of voting plans. And on the partisan side, encouraged people to vote for our endorsed candidates in each of these locations, and, saying, if you care about reproductive rights, like, these are the people you got to vote for. These are some top lines from our voter education effort. We knocked on 126,349 doors and spoke with 39,071 potential voters. And you can see it's a little small, but the breakdown of numbers in each of the locations. Wanted to share some photos. We got so many great photos from all this field work and effort. So this is a photo from New Hampshire. On the left is Hannah, our canvas director. On the right is Liam, our deputy director. In the middle is one of their volunteers, Jeremiah, just having fun and like really, really kind of getting out there and doing it. This is a photo of a couple of our Columbus canvassers. I believe on the second from right is a canvasser we worked with named Ricky, who was one of our really strong canvassers. And the 2 women who are in the gray shirts in the Ohio State shirts, they lived at the residence that Ricky and his team were knocking at. And you can see their RV in the back. They had actually, when our team went to knock on their door, they had actually just returned from canvassing themselves. They were driving out on a trip door knocking. So we really like this photo because it's so powerful, so much like power and people doing the really important work. And Columbus, I just wanted to highlight, obviously things did not go well in Ohio politically. Sherrod Brown lost his seat, very unfortunately, and Adam Miller, who we'd endorsed in the 15th congressional district, also did not win. But as you can see, we knocked on nearly 30,000 doors, far exceeded our door knock goal. in the district, and spoke with over 10,000 potential voters. So really put in the work and did a lot of time in Ohio, even though the end result was not what we hoped, of course. Just wanted to share a photo of myself and our colleague Donna and Lacey with the crew in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania. These are some of the top folks who showed up every day and drove in. The guy on the left with the Fight for Her hat on lived pretty far out, but made the 45-minute or hour commute to do a bunch of shifts a week. And we knocked on 3,600 doors for our last Get Out the Vote weekend partisan knocks in the Lehigh Valley, and spoke with just over 1,700 potential voters. And despite the fact that Susan Wild, who represents the district where we were canvassing, lost by about 4,000 votes, we had gotten out there, and knocked on a bunch of doors. So we were spreading the word and we were advocating for her. And even though it didn't work out, we're really proud of the effort we put in this and on all of our locations. So that's all I have to share in terms of highlights, but more than happy to answer questions once we move into that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. That is such interesting information. And as I always say, it's really great to get to come to these events and learn about what other departments are doing. I know generally, but to get to really dive into the details is really uplifting. Such amazing work done by everybody. We're going to go into the Q&A for about 10 minutes. So as usual, if you have any questions that you'd like answered live, please feel free to voice them in the chat and we'll get to as many as we can in the allotted time. We've got a few pre-submitted questions that I'll go through now. The first of which is going to go to Pam. You spoke a lot about your teacher trainings, which occur very widely throughout the country. And I was just curious about whether or not you feel like the scope and extent of your work is very variant depending on which state you're in, and perhaps because of the state level policies that may dictate certain approaches to education. Could you speak a little bit to that, please?
Yeah, that's a good question. We are everywhere in the country, and I find that sometimes professors even appreciate us more in areas that tend to be a little bit redder because their students aren't hearing that, that message as much. So we have had a lot of success even in places you would think might not want us. And some of that has to do with also what's in the curriculum standards state by state. In Florida, for example, a lot of ninth graders take an AP Human Geography class that has a whole unit on population. So that enables us to do more in a place like Florida. Same with Texas. They have a pretty robust geography focus for their high school students. So it's hard to say that we're shut out of anywhere. I think it's often up to the individual professors who are preparing future teachers if they're interested in what we're doing and want to share it with students, and it gets shared. But I'm always looking at what's happening. I mean, in Florida in particular, we know that there's been a lot of crackdown on what courses can even be taught at the university level. So I hope that doesn't affect our work going forward. It hasn't really affected our work so far, but we keep an eye on it for sure.
Perfect. Thank you. And just to follow up, there's a question in the chat just asking about, well, first saying that the elementary and high school education looks very great. And she's wondering what information can she provide to her school's superintendent to start using these lesson plans? Like, what's the process there?
Yeah, probably the superintendent is probably not the best place to start because they're doing more administrative work, not really working with the curriculum. If the school district has, somebody who oversees curriculum for science and social studies. Those are good contacts to introduce our materials. Or if there's a particular school in the area and you want to get some materials directly to teachers in those departments, we're happy to help with that.
Amazing. Thank you. Next question goes to Marion. You were speaking a lot about the media engagement and talking both about the articles that you write that get published and then that don't get published. And I was just wondering if you could speak to, just based off of your experience, why you think it might be particularly more challenging or difficult to get media engagement about population, and like what have you learned through this process since the project has began?
I mean, it's not good news. I kind of hate to answer this question. I think most people in this country aren't incredibly interested in population issues, unfortunately, anymore. And the population issues that they do tend to be interested in are kind of what I was talking about with the low birth rates and the, baby busts and things like that. People are worried about fertility and the economy. And the reason they're worried about that is because that's what economists and business leaders and elected officials are telling them they need to worry about. And of course, the environment never comes into any of these conversations. So, yeah, contrary to what things were like, I hear, when the organization was founded, in the 60s and the 70s, when it seems like a lot of people were this was like a mainstream issue to be interested in and concerned about. It's a little more niche now than it used to be. And there are a lot of detractors, working against us that make it really challenging for us to get our message across without sort of being overridden by false accusations of, racism or supporting eugenics or something like that, which of course is not what we're about at all, but some of what you hear on the other side. It would make it seem as though it is. So yeah, it's a challenging thing. I mean, occasionally we do find, a journalist or a letters editor or something who does seem sympathetic to the issues that we work on. The New York Times letters to the editor of the letters section is an example. He always seems, very supportive of the messages that we send in. But yeah, I think he's kind of in the minority, unfortunately. So we keep trying, but yeah, we write far more than we get published. That is for sure. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but there's been some exciting progress that's been over the past couple of years. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Just speaking more broadly in terms of like population studies, there's a question here just asking about, well, talking first about one of the precursors for slower population growth, which of course is the expansion of access to education and healthcare and women's empowerment. But there's a question here asking about in like high fertility countries where people are having really big families, part of that is because of access or lack of access to resources, right? But part of it's also because of a preference for larger families. So they're asking if it's possible for fertility rates to decline in countries where that's the case, and what the sort of process is for that. It's a big question, but I'll give that to you again, Marian.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think most countries on Earth used to have high fertility rates, and that was the norm. And obviously, things are shifting in the other direction. One of the most effective types of programs that can change social norms, it's family planning programs. A lot of these, like, I mentioned our global partners and some of the work that they do in their own communities. A lot of more rural parts of the world have no access to contraception. And so it's not even a question of, do I want fewer children? It's like, how could you even conceive of, a thought process like that when there is no way to prevent pregnancy? And so when a program comes in that does offer those services in people's own language by people that are from the community, what you tend to see is people starting to use those services and realizing the benefits of them. And then, you have a neighbor who's been using the birth control pill for a year and she's fine and she's prevented pregnancies and effectively, and maybe now I want to try doing that, you know. So it's social norms can change pretty quickly, actually. And I think that's been sort of the basis of the success of family planning programs around the world, you know, for the past 60 years or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with an expansion in access to resources like education and healthcare, and especially, of course, sexual and reproductive health, really, despite what the traditional norms are or what the religious orientation of a particular country is, I mean, the biggest precursor for slower population growth and for reduced fertility rates is this access to these broader resources and the opportunity to live a more autonomous life, as you said. Yeah, thank you. All right, Rebecca, thank you so much for yeah, just speaking more to all of the really important work that you have been doing and your team have been doing over the past year. Now we have we know what the sort of situation is moving forward in terms of a new presidency and a new administration. So I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit to what your general plan is moving forward in the wake of this, and then also like how we can maintain a sense of hope, even amidst a quite dismal kind of future politically.
Yeah, those are two great questions. To answer the first, we are still in the process of developing our plans for the coming year. For now, we're just, trying to keep in touch with all of our activists. We've been sending weekly emails out, either with actions folks can take or just messages of thanks to our supporters and Fight for Her activists. We are actively working to build a plan for the coming year, and we'll be sure to share details of that as we have that firmed up. In part, we need to wait a little bit to see, we have a really good sense of what is going to happen, but since Trump hasn't taken over yet, he hasn't actually started doing things. And it is always easier to respond to things that have happened and that are happening. So as those horrible things start to happen, we will be sure to plug people in and have people call and email their legislators, and we'll be organizing events. One thing we definitely know that we're going to do is participate in a march being organized by the Women's March and a few other groups on January 18th, which is inauguration weekend. We'll see, the 2017 March was really historic in its numbers and its reach. So we'll see how the 2025 March measures up. But we're looking forward to that. And one thing I would suggest is, if you're not already on it, someone is going to drop the link in the chat. Make sure you sign up for our Fight for Her list. The page that you'll be directed to has kind of a general petition for that anyone can sign, and then we have some location specific ones that you can sign as well. And that's where we're going to be updating people, with the most up-to-date ways that people can get involved. As for the second question, that's a really good one. I think, that I'm really still wrestling with myself. I think looking to the work that, good organizations are doing to resist and to fight back against the onslaught that we know is coming gives me hope. As I mentioned in my presentation, working with engaged young people, high schoolers who are, just kind of coming into the world, but are willing to kind of stick their necks out and be engaged gives me a lot of hope. I feel really hopeful about all of the work we did this year, and all of the people we talked to at doors across the country. Obviously, things didn't turn out as we'd hoped, but it was so encouraging to talk to people and to just have sort of like, stereotypical ways of thinking about people in certain states or communities, and their voting habits, kind of dismantled in some cases, reinforced in others. But just seeing all of the people out there who share our beliefs and are so committed to reproductive health and rights, and to a better, more sustainable, cleaner, safer world gives me a lot of hope. And I think, the last thing I'll say is just, finding something that brings you joy that's not related to politics, whether that's playing with your kids or your pet or going for hikes or, eating ice cream. I think we all need something that kind of soothes us and can help us turn our attention away from the news so that it can refuel us to get back to the work.
Absolutely. Wise words. Thank you so much. All right. We are 2 minutes after the hour, so we'll end here. Thank you so much for everyone who tuned in and for our speakers today. It's great to get to connect with all of you. Have a great holiday season, and we will be in touch with answers to questions that were submitted that were answered live and any other relevant information. So thanks again, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.